how about dealing with an employee that refuses to report to work due to fear for contracting the coronavirus if they don't have it yet? So what do you guys think about that?
Well, I would say that probably err on the side of caution here, and if they themselves aren't sick, they're just fearful of it. That could be problematic. And how long are they going to stay out? But it appears that everyone's being required nowadays to telecommute, except for some, certain industries. They're not going to be paid during that time. They can use any accrued sick time or other time off if they so choose. So I don't, think that is necessarily going to be a problem unless it causes some interruption to your operations.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, I agree with Ann, and I think it's going to be a very case specific. If you have an employee who's essential to your operations, there may be good cause to require them to come in. But also keep in mind, this is a fast moving situation. You may soon be dealing with employees who suddenly have to care for a family member who's sick and may have leave protections related to that, all sorts of, or disability issues that could come up. And at the end of the day, you have to keep in mind that a year or 2 years from now, there may be a California jury who went through this and really doesn't see the employer's perspective for hardships placed on employees that each of these jurors are more likely to relate to than to you. So I would say use good sense and really seek legal counsel on protecting potentially an issue like this.
Yep. Another question that we've been seeing a lot of in the last couple of days, how about employer obligations around screening, and in particular, employers' right to ask employees or to take the employee's temperature when they're coming to work to see if they are able to work?
Well, we had, as with the H1N1 several years ago, the EEOC had given some guidance related to the Americans with Disabilities Act, and they just a few hours ago, I think, updated that for coronavirus and confirmed that, yes, during a pandemic like this, employers can take screening methods such as testing the temperature of an employee to protect the safety and welfare of employees and customers. But that doesn't mean that there aren't pitfalls and risks that you really have to consider. The employees do have privacy rights, and if you're taking their temperature, the EEOC views that as a medical test, and that data has to be kept private and protected from disclosure to other employees. So you really need to think about really putting a good policy and training in place if you're going to attempt to screen employees. You're also going to want to make sure that the screeners aren't asking inappropriate questions. You can ask if an employee is suffering from symptoms that would be related to coronavirus, fever or cough or something like that. But they do have ADA privacy rights related to disabilities that may be susceptible to coronavirus. So potentially asking about those underlying conditions might be an invasion of their privacy.
Yeah, and I would add that, make sure your employees who are asking these questions or maybe asking these questions are trained on what's okay and what's not okay to ask, and to stress maintaining the confidentiality of any and all answers to any questions that you ask of employees.
Yep, that's a good point.
And then I would
sorry, go ahead, Mike.
I would also add, it's probably best to apply this policy to everyone rather than targeting it to specific individuals, so that you don't run into some claim of discrimination or harassment. Anthony, what do you think about the reporting time requirements if you're sending one particular employee home who fails the screening test.
Yeah,
as opposed to
and that's
closing
what I was
everything
going to
down.
mention. So for the reporting time requirement that I was talking about, the employer, if the employer mandates that the employee goes home because they have a high temperature or they have symptoms of a cold or the coronavirus, and the employer mandates that the employee goes home, and the employer has the right to mandate that and send people home if they think they're a threat to other coworkers or the public and at large. If the employer mandates that, the employer would have to pay the reporting time pay for the employee. If alternatively, if the employee comes and just says, look, I'm feeling sick, I want to go home, and voluntarily goes home, there is no reporting time pay requirement there when the employee voluntarily elects to go home. So yep, keep that in mind. I'm seeing a lot
We
of questions.
should also, one more thing to close the loop on the screening is there's a very recent California Supreme Court case where Apple was doing personal bag checks of their employees on their way out the door after a shift to make sure that they were not, stealing merchandise. And the California Supreme Court said that time that the employees are waiting to be screened and then being screened, they're under the employer's control, and so you have to, for the hourly employees, they have to be paid for that time. And I would feel very confident saying that same reasoning would apply if the employer is requiring an employee pre-shift to do some sort of screening. That employee is under your control. You probably have to pay them for the time that they're waiting for it and conducting the screening.
Yep. Good point.